After the band's massive success with 1970's Paranoid, which had reached #1 in the UK, Black Sabbath had been put on a rigorous touring schedule to support the album. Playing a stint in Australia, 2 tours of the US, as well as all of Europe, which left the group exhausted. Yet their label Vertigo, wanting a quick follow-up to take advantage of the sales and buzz from Paranoid, put the tired, overworked band back in the studio in the first part of 1971 to record what would be arguably their heaviest album ever, Master of Reality. It's July 17, 1970, and Black Sabbath had just released their single, Paranoid, the title track from their upcoming album. This is only the band's second single. The first was Evil Woman off their self-titled debut album. Not a song the band particularly felt strong about. For one, it wasn't even their own. Evil Woman was instead a top 20 song by the obscure American group Crow. And Sabbath felt like they had been forced to release their throwaway cover by management, and all for naught, since it resulted in 0 success on the charts. Ironically, Paranoid was considered a throwaway song as well. Bassist Geezer Butler explained, "The song Paranoid was written as an afterthought. We basically needed a 3-minute filler for the album, and Tony came up with the riff. I quickly did the lyrics, and Ozzy was reading them as he was singing. It took 20 to 25 minutes from top to bottom." But this time, unlike Evil Woman, Paranoid would become a smash hit and generate good and bad things for the band. Behind the scenes, the band had been lured into believing that Don Arden's former right-hand man, Patrick Meehan, and his henchman Wilf Pine would elevate them to worldwide success, while their local promoter and current manager, Jim Simpson, did not have what it took. Of course, Paranoid had already made Black Sabbath a worldwide sensation. Still, the band struggled with self-doubt, and the perception that a hungry London-based management would take them into the big leagues was too good a temptation to pass up. Black Sabbath would get what they wanted, but it would come at a cost that they would pay for the next decade and beyond. On September 4th, 1970, just 14 days before the Paranoid album would be released, Jim Simpson was served papers stating his services were no longer needed, and the band was now managed by Meehan and his company, Worldwide Artists. Although this came as a huge blow to the kind-hearted Simpson, he would later take it in stride after winning this case 5.5 years later, stating, "I was with Sabbath for their best 2 records." After the September 18th UK release of Paranoid, and only 6 months after their debut album released in February 1970, Meehan wasted no time pushing them into the limelight by getting them a spot on the popular mainstream British music TV show Top of the Pops. On Thursday, September 24th, 1970, Black Sabbath pantomimed Paranoid into millions of homes across the UK. The appearance not only helped the song move up the UK charts to the #4 position, but it also helped the band take over the #1 spot on the UK album chart, dethroning Simon & Garfunkel's popular album Bridge Over Troubled Water. In October of 1970, Mark Plummer wrote in Melody Maker about Sabbath becoming a victim of fan worship. Sudden mainstream popularity proved a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it was gratifying to reap the fruits of all their hard work, but on the other hand, pop fans were turning up at their shows, which made it seem like that Sabbath was selling out. Although the group initially welcomed the attention, it ultimately made them uncomfortable. Guitarist Tony Iommi recalled, "Top of the Pops attracted a lot of younger screaming kids. We weren't that type of band. It felt wrong to us." Lead singer Ozzy Osbourne said, "The kids who came out were okay, but it wasn't what we were trying to achieve. Bubblegum bands come and go. We were attracting people who were just fans for the minute, mostly women, and then of course they eventually disappeared. We didn't want to attract that type of fan base. We wanted fans who were genuine." Even one of their early supporters came out against the Sab 4 once they were famous.
It's National Radio 1.
John Peel was a DJ on BBC radio station Radio 1, where he hosted a show called Top Gear. In one of his regular segments on that show, known as the Peel Sessions, he would have an artist come into the BBC studio and record up to 4 songs live. This was a powerful way to promote a band and often the first major national coverage many performers achieved. As early as 1969 and long before today's social media celebrities, John Peel was known as an influencer. Peel first tried to sign Sabbath to a small record label after seeing them play on September 4th, 1969, but the band turned him down. Then, on November 11th, Peel gave Sabbath their first opportunity to be on the radio. They recorded 4 songs: Black Sabbath, Walpurgis, War Pigs with alternate lyrics, Fairies Wear Boots, and Devil's Island, later renamed Sleeping Village, A Bit of Finger. The recording was broadcast on November 29, 1969. No copies of the recording are publicly available or have been proven to still exist. But in 1971, after Sabbath saw tremendous success, Peel said, "Black Sabbath will sell because it sounds like something else. You get a process where each band that is successful is a watered-down version of something else." In another statement referring to bands like Sabbath, Deep Purple, and Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Peel said, "Those bands have lost the spark somewhere down the line and are basically going through a routine." In response, Iommi said, "That's one we really can't understand. We got on really well with John to begin with, but something seems to have upset him. We were really pleased about getting on TV."
Oh God, please help me! Oh no!
According to Tony, the band had no say in choosing their first single. The single was just one track taken from the album by the recording company because they thought it would sell and was representative of something we did. We don't specifically record singles, and the decision to release them rests with the record company. But now we have got hassles with people saying that we sold out for getting into the top 10. It's something of an achievement, and it's okay, but there won't be a follow-up single. The backlash from Fairweather fans for selling out was one thing. Far more concerning was public perception that the members of Black Sabbath were actually Satanists and practitioners of black magic. This PR nightmare had been brewing ever since the band changed their name from Earth to Black Sabbath. And even though the song Black Sabbath was written as an anti-black magic Satan song, the band could not shake being tagged as dark and mystical occultists. In countless interviews, the band members explicitly stated that they did not practice black magic or worship the devil, yet they continued to receive negative press and attention from self-professed Satan worshippers asking them to perform at black masses. While the mystique brought them attention from those on the fringe, it also kept them from the kind of success enjoyed by bands like Led Zeppelin. Clear from interviews in early 1970, the band had grown irritated with questions about the occult, as it was overshadowing their music. In March 1970, Ozzy made those feelings clear by saying, "You're going to ask about black magic," he said, anticipating the line of questioning. "It's rubbish. Geezer wrote a song called Black Sabbath, and at the time, we were called Earth, but we were constantly being confused with another group with a similar name, and so we changed it to Black Sabbath." Sabbath was about to embark on their first U.S. tour, the holy grail for any up-and-coming European band at the time. But instead of excited anticipation, the band was more afraid that their unwanted satanic image they had gained in the UK would follow them over to the States, uncomfortably aware of how badly that could hurt them in Easy Rider country. They had good reason for concern. The trial of Charles Manson and his followers, after the brutal slaying of Sharon Tate and 6 others, was in the news almost daily. Geezer said, "We just hope we don't get all the black magic confusion over there. We are frightened by the thought of the extremists. We don't want anything to do with the Charles Manson thing. We will just be going over there as a British hard rock band." Tony added, "We might change some of the words of the songs so we don't have any trouble. We were never into black magic. The lyrics were chosen to go with the heavy music. The kids are always trying to interpret lyrics, and they often create things that aren't there. The music of Black Sabbath is simple, basic stuff. Everybody thinks we're a black magic group, but we just picked the name because we liked it. I agree some of the numbers on the LP are about supernatural things, but that's as far as it goes." But it wasn't just their name and misunderstood lyrics that pushed the critics to cry, "Satanist." Black Sabbath was often confused with another British band named Black Widow, a band who leaned hard into the satanic and black magic imagery and wanted the notoriety of being the band for devil worshippers. During one of the tours, Black Widow had secured the services of Maxine, wife of England's chief witch Alex Sanders, to appear in their stage show as Lady Astaroth, a tormented girl from the 18th century who was driven insane and jumped to her death. Maxine would end up naked at the show's end and simulate sex with the band's lead vocalist. Ironically, their biggest song was called "Come to the Sabbath," but there was another more direct connection between the two bands. Black Sabbath's new manager, Patrick Meehan, had previously managed Black Widow and produced their last album, Sacrificed. Ozzy said, "A lot of people have a grudge against us because of this black magic thing, but it has gotten all out of proportion. At one time, we got so confused with Black Widow, it was unbelievable. We're two completely different bands in music and everything." Black Sabbath's confusion with Black Widow got so bad that the band actually considered changing their name again, but the Meehan's had convinced Sabbath that Black Widow would be changing their image. Ironically, when Black Widow did back down on the occult imagery, their notoriety faded. Being associated with the devil never went away for Black Sabbath or even Ozzy as a solo artist. But to be fair, Sabbath and Ozzy both used this imagery to their advantage as the years rolled on. And it's also fair to say that the British record label Vertigo and manager Jim Simpson knew the occult was seen as a powerful marketing strategy to tap into or create the next big thing in the youth market. Long hair no longer shot. Bright and patterned clothes no longer shot. Drug use no longer shot. So the occult, perhaps the last taboo along with sexuality, was willingly deployed. Simpson later admitted that he did make up stories for shock value. Vertigo didn't help things by releasing their first album on Friday the 13th or having an inverted cross on the inside of the album. Although the second album saw a shift from the perceived satanic preoccupations of the debut release, Paranoid was still an album shot through with dark themes. In the process of backpedaling away from the supernatural, the band refused to celebrate the witch's Sabbath at Stonehenge. This rejection allegedly caused Alex Sanders, head witch in England, to cast a spell on Sabbath. This story, which would be denied and affirmed over the coming years, would become part of the Sabbath mythology in a way that illustrates the awkward push-pull that existed between the band and their co-opting of horror imagery. Uncertain what to expect in the US, the band decided to test the waters across the Atlantic with a small exploratory tour in the fall of 1970. Sabbath had looked at coming over earlier in the year, but the reasons why they didn't are cloudy. Some statements indicate it was because of the unrest with college students protesting the Vietnam War. Part of this theory came from the rumor that Black Sabbath had canceled the US tour before it even started after the Fillmore East and West shut down for the summer of 1970 due to the possibilities of violence. In reality, neither Fillmore Club ever closed during this time. Another theory was that in early 1970, Sabbath was in talks with Patrick Meehan Jr. about hiring him as a manager. Still, since they hadn't officially signed with him yet, they needed first to ditch Simpson, and then they could resume pushing the band to the land of the Yanks. The final theory, as Butler mentioned earlier, was at the same time in July as Sabbath was planning to play San Francisco, the Charles Manson trial began. And worried about Sabbath's supposed controversial lyrics and how audiences might respond, the record company Warner Brothers may have squashed the whole outing. Now, with the Meehan family, Jr. and Sr. firmly in place as their managers and Paranoid tearing up the charts in the UK, it was time to go spread the sound of Sabbath. Patrick Meehan Sr. stayed in the office and mainly served as an overseer, while Patrick Meehan Jr.'s role was more hands-on. The band touched down at JFK Airport on Wednesday, October 28, 1970. It was the first time that any of them had set foot on American soil, and they didn't care that it was a low-budget tour since they were playing some of the most prestigious small gigs on the East and West Coast. According to Iommi, one of the stupidest things they did was haul their entire PA system instead of renting one in the US. Not realizing the US had a different electrical system, Sabbath promptly blew out the power in the first place they played. With a ticket price of $1.50 to $2.50, the band played their first gig at Glass Barrel State College on Friday, October 30th. This contradicts Ozzy and Tony's autobiography, where they state that the first gig was at Ugano's in New York, but the proof of this newspaper ad shows they did not play Ugano's until 3 days after the Glass Barrel gig. Their tour promoter, Rick Green,